Going to finish this painting today. Got a good bit done last time, and now we're going to come back and finish this up. We still have a bit to do. First things first, we got to get this road in using that blue-gray mixture, blue, white, black. A little more blue. Trying to get the color right. This is a nice park pathway extending up and over to the top of the ridge here. We still need to put in the pine tree on the left-hand side. A lot more of the twisting, winding trunks that are filling the background. The foreground trunks on the right-hand side, the bigger trees closer to us. And maybe a little more detailing on a few of the bushes before we can consider this piece complete. Should be about a half hour to finish. So buckle up, here we go. Okay, starting with some darker mix on the right-hand side, and we're going to lay in lighter mixes over on the left-hand side, and so there's a little more light happening at the top of the path and then kind of extending over to the left. If we overdo this, it'll look too curved, and one of the things that I touched up after I turned the camera off was this road. I made it look a little more flat by evening out the contrast between the right and the left. It should be darker on the right-hand side of the path based on the shadows. However, we don't want to be too dark with it or it looks like it's curved, and it is laying fairly flat. Having the path look more homogeneous will give us that effect. Okay, over to my green mix, blue, umber, and yellow. A little bit of white in there as well, just kind of filling in the edges of this path, bringing it back upwards. And we'll dab a few spots over here on the right with the bushes. Back to my blue umber mix, blue and umber mixed together, get some darker color, and we'll put a little more umber in that. Slow that blue down. We'll put a few more bits of some darker color to push this farther back into the distance. There we go. Grab some white, sort of dry brush on top of this just to mute it down and pull it together a little bit more. There we go. Looks good. Just trying to get the top edge of this path to lay correctly. Touch more of the white to my gray mix, and this will be the highlight color. Again, it's too high contrast here, and you want to make it a little more homogeneous, more of the same as we're going along. So keep that in mind, not to make it too high contrast when you're doing this step. It's pretty uniform and light at the top, and then it's a little bit more distinctive here at the bottom. I think it was looking okay, and then now I added more white because it is lighter, and that's when it started looking a little bit too warped where it's sort of bending over to the left. Paths can be kind of tricky because you need it to look like it's three-dimensional and that it's moving and turning without being totally the same, but if it's too much contrast, it's kind of hard to get right. So just keep playing with it until you do get it right, and there you go. You're back to my blue and my umber and a little bit of the white for this background. More of that blue. Blue tends to recede, so we put it in the background to push that background further back. Olive green mix, yellow and black here. There's going to be lots of mixing happening. This is a complicated piece, and we have this sort of moody grayscale kind of feel, very muted colors because it's a dreary day, and I'm using the colors to really try to capture the feeling of this rainy afternoon in the park. Here I'm putting in the pine tree next using this olive green mix. I went for a very simple green mix with the black, a little bit of the yellow, a touch of the umber as well. Trying to lay in the underlayer painting first, add a touch of blue to that to make it more green, and then we'll start to bring in more color as we go along. It's a difficult color to capture. It's kind of a brownish olive color for this pine tree underneath, and then there's kind of a darker green laying on top, and there'll be some lighter green highlights as well. 3 or 4 different tones to get this to look correct. It's kind of a big bushy pine tree that's extending out multiple layers here. And as we paint it, we'll make it look more three-dimensional as we go. A little more yellow to that umber mix and that olive green mix. Make it a little bit lighter, lots more yellow. This is going to be the highlights on this pine tree that extends over the path. Quick, short brush strokes for this. Keep it nice and loose and flowy. Again, we're not painting each individual leaf, we're trying to capture the light and how it's hitting the form and the shape of this tree. Once we put the trunk in, it'll help define the shape even better. It's a little bit too light all over, but we'll come back for that in the future. And I decided to put a little bit more of this yellow mix over here, calm down the white that I added last time to make it a little bit more fully saturated. Okay, here's the liner brush. Mix some more of that blue umber mixture, add a good bit of water to make it run nicely. We're going to start putting in these background tree trunks that I have very gently marked in pencil here in the back that you can't see, but I can. Lots of thin little tree trunks extending upwards, overlapping each other. That blue and the umber make nice dark color, good base color for these trunks. You can see that it's not quite running off of my brush. I'm not adding enough water yet. I will get there. But I'm not there yet, so we gotta add a little more water to it to really make it flow. It should be about 1 part water to 1 part paint. Just liquidy enough that it'll run, but not so liquidy that it drips down your canvas board or canvas. So be careful about that. You don't want to add so much water that put the brush on there, it just starts running drips. We don't want that. That'll ruin the background as well. Work on that, try to figure out what the right balance is for you and for your brush size. The smallest little liner brush that you can find will make this work the best, especially if you're working on a very small canvas like I am. If you're working on a bigger canvas, you won't need it to be quite so small. It's all proportional to the size of the canvas. Because this is a 9x12 canvas board, it's quite small, and so therefore if I want something to look delicate and far in the distance, I need it to be very fine with my bristles and on my brush. Things that are thicker will look closer to me. I'm a little bit thinner, I can push it farther back. Also, they may be thicker because they're grouped together more densely. right there at the top of the path. Everything is packed really close together. Lots and lots of trees, probably a good 50 of them all in a row, kind of overlapping each other, extending back up the hill. And then here in the front, they're a little more spread out, more distinct, more individual. Again, I'm following the light pencil lines that I put in right at the beginning of the painting. I put these in, sort of marking out where these tree trunks and limbs are extending upwards. It's important to note that when you are putting in these trees, don't feel like you need to make it match exactly to the photograph that you're working from. You can always move trees around a little bit, make adjustments that look better for your composition. Putting in more trees here. It was such a mess of trees that it was quite dense and dark underneath. Adding a little bit of white to my umber mix to lighten it up just a touch. Good for a highlight color, more of a gray, and that lighter, more muted color will fade more into the background. Went a little heavy-handed, so I'm trying to soften it in places with this umber white gray mixture. Even using this lighter color, it's more of a muted neutral color for some of these even more distant trees that you can see the limbs are there, but they almost blend in with the background. We want the background to be interesting and full of detail without distracting from the foreground. Everything is kind of dark. Part of the reason for that is because it's so overcast, you're not getting a lot of highlights and sharp contrast here. Everything should have kind of a muted, softened feel to it due to the rain and the dreariness and the mist kind of hanging over this park. This step takes the longest, putting in all these little limbs, and I'm sort of enjoying the process of tossing these in here. A little more water to that. Here's some more of the white, clean brush, putting in the path now. Again, I'm pushing the contrast, and in fact, I think I didn't need to do this. So if you're painting along at home, don't need to add this step. It's too high contrast now, which is where I run into trouble, and later on I'm going to make adjustments to this. Okay, here's some blue and umber mix again, starting to put in the trunk of this pine tree. I feel like this trunk is the detail that I was missing to really pull this forward into the foreground. Back to my olive green mix, and we'll just dash some lighter colors here and there, covering up the trunk in places. That looks nice. More umber and blue in my umber mix. Darken that back up again. And we'll start to toss in these foreground trees. This takes a while because I'm trying to cover up all of that white that I have left of the canvas showing through. And then I gotta patch anywhere that I don't cover up from the sky color and sort of match as best I can. Keep wondering if it would be better to start with the trunks first and then lay in the background around it, but I find that that's also difficult to do. You also could just paint the entire background and then bravely put in the trunks over the top. I left them marked so I'd keep my perspective and proportions more accurate to the photograph. I find that when I try to do it more freehand, I can kind of move things around too much. You gotta find what works for you. I find that this works okay as long as you're careful to cover up all of the white canvas. You don't want this kind of halo effect around your trunks. That'll look weird if the white is showing up at all. So after you put these trunks in, make sure that you go back and fill in the sky, fill in the background trees enough so that it flows and the viewer can't tell that there was this sort of halo-y outline going on with your tree trunks. A little more of the white mix, a little lighter here. Just tossing this kind of grayish tone into the background. Once again, getting rid of any of the canvas showing up and blending that out. Looks good. A little more of the dark mix of blue and umber. More umber, make this a little darker, really pulls the eye forward. The light is sort of behind, so everything in the foreground will look a little darker. And putting in the second trunk. This takes a while because we're using a liner brush and it's delicate work, and I'm going slow to be careful to get nice clean edges of these branches and of these trunks. I really want this to look good, and so I'm taking my time, and you should too. You should never feel like you're in a rush when you're painting. Just take your time, be careful. And in fact, at home, you have all the time in the world. I'm trying to get a video that is not too long out to you all, so I'm conscious of the time I'm taking on things. Where you have unlimited amount of time at home, you can just spend hours and hours working on a painting. I tend to work about an hour on a painting and call it good. So the luxury of being able to take hours and hours and work on a piece over many days is great. Enjoy that. For me, the way I like to paint, I like to go quickly. I get bored with things too fast if I don't really go after things well. But I like to keep things moving and always go on to the next new thing, which is why I just paint a lot. That way I get some really great paintings along the way, and I don't get bored in the process. So yay. If you make a mistake, don't worry, you can always cover it up with more paint. Seriously, it's that easy. There is no right, there is no wrong, just put it in, and you can make adjustments as you go. Big part of painting is just get it onto the canvas, and then make some adjustments. Not everything will look just right when you first paint it down. You have to kind of layer it over. And sometimes the contrast of color, of form, of texture can have a huge impact on how you perceive things. So really a process of putting it out there, looking at it, thinking about it, making adjustments, and then going on. It's important to put some smaller branches out here as well, just to add those little touches of detail. Looks really nice. Pretty happy with how this painting turned out. Thought it looks really nice. Different, a little harder, pushing myself a little bit with this type of painting. I love painting sunrises and can get lost in painting clouds all day long, but I want to grow as an artist. I need to do things that I'm less comfortable with, and painting trees up close is definitely one of those things. Trying to find a happy medium between impressionism, abstraction, without looking cartoony. I'm trying to not veer so much into almost a storybook feel. Trying to get it to be emotive and moody and interesting and modern looking without it becoming like I've just walked into the set of Nickelodeon. Nothing against artists who paint in a more cartoon style. Some of their work is quite impressive and not knocking that at all by any means. For myself, I prefer it to be more impressionistic, just what I like. A little bit lighter here. This tree is a little bit more of a gray tone. Added a touch of the white there to make that lighter. It also helps push it back farther because it's lighter. Everything closer to me will be quite dark. Again, the light is in the background, so everything close should be darker. I love how these branches are sort of intertwining and crossing over each other. That really adds a lot to the illusion of depth. Trees are not telephone poles. They should bend and move. None of them are straight. So if you can avoid making your trees look like poles and have them have some personality and some movement to them, the better it will look. Some more of that blue and umber mixture, again using this as my base color for a lot of these trees and these trunks, especially here in the foreground. Only 10 minutes left and we'll be done with this painting. Part of the reason why I chose a small canvas board to paint on, one reason is they're great to practice on, but another is that it's easy to fill up a canvas this size in about an hour. I didn't want this taking 4 or 5 hours. I actually did this painting twice. I did a little bit on location on a bigger canvas. I then went to this and painted the whole painting again as a study, and then I went back to the bigger painting, the bigger canvas, and finished the bigger canvas, making some adjustments after I had learned a few things by painting it smaller. Sometimes painting something smaller gives you a better feel for the overall form and composition, so that when you go back to paint something larger, you already feel like you know what's going on. Here's some lighter highlights in the background and soften it, subdue it. There should be a lot going on back there, but it shouldn't be as bold or as dark. One of the reasons why I use a smaller canvas, like I said, is it'll take me 3 hours to paint, say, a 20 by 20 painting or 20 by 24, something bigger like that. If I'm painting something so complicated like all these branches and leaves and roads and all that. If I'm doing a scene like this with lots of foreground and middle ground stuff happening, where if I was doing something like a sunrise or an ocean painting, there's a lot less going on and it's more layered and it's easier to go faster with that stuff. So when I'm doing something complicated like this, doing it small, like I said, on a canvas board is really a great way to practice and get everything right. I ended up giving that larger canvas, by the way, to my parents who live in Texas. They were delighted to have a new painting from me. I think it's now hanging in their living room, something that would fit my mom's sort of decor. Cutting off a little bit of the excess here. I didn't like how this branch was coming out, so I'm just going to wipe it off because the paint is still fairly fresh. I can pretty easily get away with this with a paper towel. And we'll just go back in and relay it in and make it look a little bit better than it was. They were overlapping in a weird way and it was messing with my eyes and the perspective wasn't looking quite right. So again, mistakes happen. You just have to flow with it, keep going with it, and eventually you'll figure it out and make it look correct. Back to my light blue mixture, white and blue with a round brush. Just going to fill in the sky in a few spots. There's a little more blue poking through actually of the blue sky. Made it a little bit too gray in a few spots I think, and we're going to push that a little bit more here. In the larger painting that I did, I actually went a lot more gray and made it almost like a light white color. It's very overcast on that day, and I decided that I wanted to really capture that more accurately by making it more of a light white gray, almost white, just a little bit off, a little more gray. And that's the color I went with. For this painting, which is very colorful and moody, I pushed the blue a lot more. So you have to figure out what you want to do. You can go very white and kind of an off gray with it, or you can go more blue. Just figure out what you want to do and have fun with it. One of the reasons why I changed this tree on the right here is that it's bending more to the right, kind of bowing more. And again, I said don't paint them like telephone poles, and yet I was painting one and it was a little straight, so we want to make sure that we have some movement. Some of them can be straight, but not all of them. And if they're all too straight, then it gets kind of boring. Try to have some variety and have some of these branches kind of forking off, as trees often will have these big lower branches kind of happening. So we want to indicate that with what we're doing. When you're painting, don't feel like you have to put every single branch in. You don't. If you get the trunks in, get a number of indications, that's enough. Our brains will fill in a lot of detail, and we can add the illusion of a lot of detail pretty quickly. We don't need to actually put in every single one, because some of this will be covered by leaves anyhow. And you look at a tree, if you really look at it, there's not as many branches as you're thinking. Or if there are, they're at the top, and they're little for the most part. Lower down here, there's not quite as many, so you don't need to put too many yourself. Okay, bringing in some lighter mix. I think I could have blended this better. Maybe I made it a little bit more warm, kind of a warm brown. I went kind of cool, kind of matching the road and echoing elements of that. Everything is kind of blued out today. How I was painting it, I had a lot of blue on my palette. I'm fine with how it looks, and having that kind of stark contrast with this white. This doesn't look bad per se, but I think I could have gone a little bit warmer with it, and that would have pulled it forward more. Blue pushes back, and a brown, a warm kind of orangey brown, would have pulled it much more forward into the foreground. But again, that's why we do studies. We try something, we see how it looks, and then we can make adjustments when we repaint the painting, or make adjustments even on this smaller canvas. Deep red mix, red, umber, and a touch of white. Good amount of umber, lots of the red, nice and bold. This is going to be some of the leaves here on the right, and this is going to push the foreground much farther forward because red is a very bold, warm color. It'll really pull your eye forward, which is good. Blending that out a little bit with my finger and just keep dabbing it in, trying to find the right balance for how much I want to put in, as it is late fall and it is not totally covered with leaves. There are some there, but it's not completely covered, so gotta just dab it in places, figure out where it should be. Farther back, I'll add a little more white to that, kind of soften it. One's closer to the right, there's going to be a little bigger, and there'll be a little more full richness, full tone of the color. A little more here. There we go. Light red mix, a little bit of the deep red mix, so white and then a little more to my mixture. There we go. And some lighter leaves here in the background on this more distant big oak back here. little more of this lighter color back here in the distance. I think in my larger painting I didn't quite go so heavy-handed with this, but it looks nice well enough. Here's some more of the light gray, touch of the white, blue, and umber, the liner brush. Just going to gently bring this a little bit lighter and pull back a little bit on this red. Got a little too heavy-handed with it, like I said. Blend that out a little bit more. A little more white, a little more of the umber. There we go. And we'll toss a little bit of this lighter red mix here on the path. There's some leaves kind of scattered across it, so we'll indicate that with a few little brush strokes, horizontally of course, kind of pulling across the path. Again, this path is too high contrast, so we want to adjust that. Put a little bit of the red over here on the right hand side as well. Looks nice, just to bring some more color there. A little bit of the orange mix, yellow plus the red mix. Pretty bold. Just bring out a few more lighter highlights back there. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this painting lesson, part 2. I'll be back with a brand new painting very soon. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell icon for notifications of each and every new upload. I usually upload on Tuesdays. And if you haven't, check out my Etsy shop, my Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. Just look for Impulsive Artistry, and you should find me. Thanks so much. Have a great day.